Start of the day, start of the day, it is the start of the day. Start of the day, start of the day, it is the start of the day. Start of the day, start of the day, it is the start of the day.
Oh.
Start of the day, start of the day,
Yeah,
it is the start of the day.
What'd you tell him, Amin?
Go ahead before I get to the liner
No,
here.
just do the liner.
We're trying to get a sound from the Matthew Berry interview that might have slipped through the cracks.
The stat of the day is brought to you by ZipRecruiter. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. Weird show.
Folks, the Miami Heat lost to the 6-19 Detroit Pistons last night by 20 points. At home in massively fraudulent Ponzi scheme arena. There's no stat here. It was just really funny. Here's the stat of the day. The Chicago Bears have been playing football for 103 seasons, and Jay Cutler is their all-time passing yards leader with 23,433. How is this possible? Jared Goff has more passing yards than the Chicago Bears all-time passing leader. Second all-time Bears passing leader, Sid Luckman.
Yeah.
14,686. So here's your stat of the day. Here are some guys. Here's a list of guys I found who would be the Chicago Bears' second all-time leading passer in yards. Carson Wentz, Jameis Winston, Gus Frerotte.
No!
Bobby Hebert, New York Jets legend
Hebert.
Richard Todd,
Yeah.
Jay Schrader, Mark Rippon, Kyle Orton, Stan Humphries, Elvis Gerbach, Jeff
Embarrassment to
Hostetler,
humanity.
Rodney Peete, Mike Tomczak, David Gerard, Marcus Mariota, Baker Mayfield, Mark Sanchez, Teddy Bridgewater, Case Keenum, and with 7 more career passing yards than Hall of Famer Sid Luckman, Joey Harrington.
Wow.
Amazing.
Ladies-
Excellent job,
There
Mike.
was a solid chunk of 90s quarterbacks in
So
there.
many funny
Oh my God.
names.
Yes.
So
Mike
much
Tomczak took me back.
droning,
David Gerard.
unrelenting mediocrity. I don't remember the stat from the other day that I think maybe you can get just Tom Brady's NFC stats and be the leading passer in Chicago Bears history. There was some ridiculous stat like
I think
that.
Tom Brady, since he joined the Bucks, would be the leading passer in Bears history. Since he joined the Bucks. I mean, it's
Yeah.
great.
How is this possible? It's 103 years.
Yeah.
And it's one of
Just-
the oldest NFL franchises too. Roger Sherman wrote an article in The Ringer a couple years ago when they drafted Justin Fields, ranking the 45 Chicago Bears quarterbacks, and number 1 was Jay Cutler. But behind Jay Cutler is
Rex
a
Grossman?
list. I mean, Jim McMahon is recognizable just because he won a Super Bowl, but like statistically, yeah, he's behind Jay Cutler. on
Justin
this
Fields
list.
is going to be the leading passer, the best quarterback in Bears history.
It won't take a lot, though. That's the thing. Like, it's amazing for a franchise that's been around as long as the Bears to have no recognizable franchise quarterbacks.
How high was Rex Grossman?
Pretty high, I'm
Well, he's
assuming.
behind Jim
He's
Harbaugh,
like
Mitch
4th.
Trubisky,
Yeah.
Eric Kramer, Dave
Kramer,
Krieg, Mike
Mitch
Tomczak,
Trubisky.
Chris Chandler,
He had a year.
Kyle
Yeah.
Orton's number 9.
Chris Chandelier.
Rex Grossman is number 10.
Wow. Top
Justin
10.
Fields, this all started because I looked up, I was like, what number is Justin Fields all time? He's top 20 in passing yards all time for the Bears. He's played like 18 games. He's he's one of the 20 best quarterbacks in
Well,
passing
he,
yards
he
they've
also
ever had.
has to be by leaps and bounds already the career leading rusher for the position for the Bears, right? Unless
Wow.
was it that guy Harry Burris? Didn't they have a quarterback Burris his last name? There can't be many quarterbacks who have many rushing yards.
I don't think there is. I'd be surprised. I mean, Burris is maybe Burris, but I doubt it. Like Justin Fields, I think he's run for like 600, 700 yards this season alone. Like,
I know, but he hasn't played very much. So how many yards is Justin Fields already the career rushing leader at quarterback for the Chicago Bears?
I'm looking it
Do
up.
you guys remember when the mayor of San Francisco called Elvis Gerbach an embarrassment to mankind?
I don't.
You
No.
remember this? Oh my God, what a time this was. So he was backing up Steve Young, I guess, and Steve Young got hurt, and he went out there and he didn't have a great game, and so the mayor of San Francisco called him an embarrassment to humanity or something like that, man. Oh man, you took me back with some of those names.
They were all great. Every last one of the names was wonderful. I wanted to talk to you about a couple of things going on in baseball, Mike. Aaron Judge now gets $360 million. Trey Turner, I can't believe I'm living in an age. Trey Turner gets 11 years, $300 million. The $300 million contract is now a normal thing.
Trey Turner turned down more money just to play in Philadelphia. More money just to play in Philadelphia.
What is happening here? Can you get me the sound, please, of David Sampson talking about Ichiro's $100 million contract destroying the sport many years ago? I'd like to just play that sound as we get a bunch of $300 million contracts all over the place. What do you make of what's happening here, Mike?
A couple things. Number one, it's wild that A-Rod's contract already looks kind of cute. His $252 million contract that Boris got him as a way to exactly double Kevin Garnett's contract. It's now like, oh, that's what an adorable little deal. Jameson Taillon just got $17 million a year from the Cubs. Jameson Taillon, he's a fine pitcher. He's making $17 million a year. This is very quickly getting out of control. The contracts are big enough now that Trey Turner can turn down whatever it was, 40 extra million, in order to just play in the city he wants to play in. Because honestly, what's the difference between 310 million and 340 million? Like, we're now into the true stratosphere here, where these guys, if these teams think they're worth it and they want to lock them up for a decade, they have no problem going to 300 million or 340 million. The Yankees have already spent 400 million this offseason. 360 million for Judge, about 40 million for Rizzo. The word is that they're interested in Carlos Rondon from who pitched very well in the last few years, is maybe the best lefty on the market, certainly the best lefty on the market this year. They might spend $600 million this offseason on 3 guys. So I don't know, like, the revenue is high enough and the teams care enough about winning, I guess, that this is, and in this particular year, you've got big market teams, the Cubs and the Giants specifically, who have a ton of money, who have been very bad or mediocre at best and have a ton of money to spend. And when that happens, this perfect storm comes up where these guys, Dansby Swanson and Trey Turner and Xander Bogaerts and Aaron Judge, are just cashing in. The Yankees were always going to sign him. There was no way they were letting him go. It didn't matter what anybody else offered, really. I think this was always going to happen. But $360 million, $40 million a year until he's 40 years old is an enormous gamble. That guy gets hurt. He's an enormous man. His body will break down. That contract might look really, really bad. Not in 9 years, but in 4 or 5 years.
Oh, but you say this, Mike, but the finances of the sport have clearly changed. You ride Miguel Cabrera to the end. You hope you can get the milestones out of him. It's a miracle. They're paying his bloated ass, I don't know how many millions of dollars, and they've cashed in most of it. But what everyone's realized now, as the streaming companies get into the game, as these regional TV contracts make an appearance, and as Stugotz's boy Cohen with the Mets says, hey, I don't care about any of this stuff. I'm just going to sign everybody who wants to play real rich guy baseball. I heard the Aaron Judge contract, and I thought it was small. I thought it was low just because of the amount of money they're giving out now, and because clearly what they've realized, the Yankees have realized, we were ripping Jeter off. These brands are worth so much more. They're worth so much more than you people understand, that we could give Trey Turner $300 million because our regional television contracts are so fat, and 162 games of programming is very valuable television.
It's very valuable. It's not just the games. It's also the pregame show and the postgame show. It's also, there's probably something going on here where they're looking down the road at all having their own app that people have to subscribe to just to pay. Right now you can watch every major league game in every market for about $200 a year or something like that. What happens when they decide, when it's like the streaming services and they decide, no, each of us is an individual streamer. You want to watch Yankees games? It's $150 a year to watch Yankees games, and it's $99 a year to watch Giants games, and it's $79 a year to watch Cubs games, and it's $199 a year to watch Red Sox games because all of us Boston masshole suckers will pay it. Like that, there's probably some anticipation, I would imagine, of whatever the revenue is now, that revenue increasing dramatically over the next decade would be my guess. I don't know how that would work with the revenue sharing and everything else that the league has to engage in. But look at it this way. Judge was offered the offer that the Yankees leaked intentionally to mess with Aaron Judge was what? $213 million. He just got $360 million. So Aaron Judge decided to bet on himself, and that bet paid out at $150 million extra dollars. So, you know, if that's true, if they could always have afforded $360 million, I think you're right to say that the amount that these guys are worth. And then granted, he's a special case. It's that city. The guys in the outfield dress like him. He just set the AL home run record, blah, blah, blah. But these guys are all worth a lot more than they've been paid, even when we've seen them get paid an enormous amount of money.
You say that, but here's David Sampson saying the corporate structure is going to fall apart because the Mariners had offered Ichiro $100 million.
I am speechless by that contract. I'm hoping that report is false because there's no chance that the top of the lineup, forget that, there's no chance anybody's worth that. And Ichiro, who's led his team to zero, nothing, I hope you're wrong, Dan. It's unbelievable. You know what? Everybody gets what they deserve, and I guess maybe that'll be more luxury tax money and more revenue sharing money they'll have to give. But signing, I'm sure it can't be true. There's no way they gave $20 million a year to Ichiro at his age for 5 years. There's no way.
It is true. This isn't wrong.
It can't be, Dan. It'll take the sport down, that contract. It'll right back to the ridiculous contracts. It can't be.
Your sport's out of control.
Well, signing Ichiro to $20 million a year for 5 years is a joke. It's inexcusable. It's complete mismanagement. It can't be true.
So quaint.
You sound so young.
Yeah, oh, Dan sounds so full of vim and vigor.
$360 million for Aaron Judge when he can get hurt. What people were enjoying most about yesterday, I thought, Mike, because you started FireJoeMorgan.com. John Heyman.
Hey, man.
You keep doing that. It's not funny. John Heyman was getting dragged on Twitter as an old guy trying to break news in the news-breaking age for saying that Arson Judge was going to the San Francisco Giants.
Mm-hmm.
And he got clipped because everyone in social media makes fun of Bob Nightingale and John Heyman are reputable journalists. They've been trying to do that job well for a long time, but now they're old people trying to keep up on the news, and it's hard.
Yeah, if you're gonna be in the get to Twitter first and break the story business, your autocorrect has to be very carefully watched and observed. And I felt bad for the guy, but I more felt bad for him for the news that he was reporting. Arson Judge is funny. We can all laugh at Arson Judge.
Yeah.
But he broke the story that he was going to the Giants. That's the problem. He got it wrong. And then 1 second later, he had to say, "Sorry, wait, I jumped the gun. He's not going to the Giants." That's bad. That's bad, man. You can't do that when the entire sport is not only focused on this one guy and where he's going, but all the other free agents out there have to wait in line. Dansby Swanson and Xander Bogaerts and all these guys are like, well, no one's going to sign us until Judge signs. And that's the first domino that will fall. You can't be wrong about that. That was just a real bummer of a mistake on his part.
Unfortunate.
The Arson
for him,
Judge part was funny.
Yes.
It's actually probably good that he said Arson Judge because now everybody's focused on Arson Judge.
Correct.
Instead of on the fact that he got it wrong.
A blessing in disguise.
Heady play.
Yes.
Heady play by that guy.
No doubt about it. Dan mentioned Stevie Cohen and him throwing money everywhere, and he is. But I'd be interested in your thoughts on this. I found what they did this week very responsible because deGrom, who is great, okay, there's no denying that, but he's often injured. And to give that guy $185 million, 6 years guaranteed, at the age of 35, to me seemed ridiculous, seemed like something the Rangers would do. And I was actually glad the Mets didn't do it. I'll take 2 years of Verlander at 40 and 41 over the next 6 of Jacob deGrom. Do you agree?
I kind of do, yeah, man. I got to say that it's a gamble to give Judge $40 million a year till he's 40, it's a bigger gamble to give deGrom what the Rangers gave him.
Of course.
I think you're way better off paying $40 million a year for $43 million a year for Verlander for 2 years. I think there's a very good chance that Justin Verlander makes more starts in the next 2 years than deGrom makes in 5 years for the Rangers.
Yes.
So I got to say, I think it was smart. I think the smart moves here are huge dollar per year contracts for very few number of years for these guys.
Correct.
It's what the Dodgers started this. They gave Trevor Bauer whatever it was, $40 million a year for 3 years. That blew up in their faces. That contract's over after not too long. And that, imagine if they had given him $300 million or whatever. Like, I mean, that's obviously in an exceptional case of the worst dude in the world. It's 100% their fault. They knew who they were signing. They knew he was a terrible guy. I don't feel bad for them in the slightest. But in general, when you're talking about guys who are risks, yeah, more money, fewer years. That's the smart move. I think the Mets do. The Mets have been smart. I just wish they hadn't obviously colluded with the Yankees to not bid on Judge.
The Poscast, he does it with Joe Posnanski. I don't know, emergency podcast on the contracts or no emergency podcast? It doesn't rise to that level of import.
Doesn't quite rise to the we almost had an emergency podcast. We were texting during the college football game about the Dr. Pepper challenge thing. We almost had an emergency podcast.
Why did you do that?
Well, because they fixed it. They fixed it within like an hour.
Yes.
They felt the obvious shame coming at them for being cheap. I was looking up stats on Frito-Lay's yearly revenue so I could shame them. They made like $10.2 billion in profit last year. And I was like, how dare you not give both of these people $100,000? And also, it was just going to be, in a larger sense, a sort of emergency podcast about this dystopian nightmare hellscape that we're all in, where people go out as halftime entertainment and compete for money to pay for their own education.
so
While
great.
the
What the
players
hell
on the
is going on?
sidelines are playing mostly for free without salaries.
So great.
to get
That's right.
scholarships
It's
also.
comedy.
I was
America.
thinking, like, I'm shocked Dr. Pepper doesn't have some sort of like tiebreaker plan in place. Like, how has this never happened before? And then I realized if they did, the people, like the students, would be smart enough to collude to tie one another so that they both get free tuition moving forward.
The thing that I can't believe none of these places has figured out is that the way you do this is you basically do the Drake video, right? You say like, hey, these two people are going to compete for scholarship money, and they each get to bring 25 of their friends to cheer them on, right? And then they do whatever, and they are like, okay, great, you won and you lost, but guess what? This was all just a ruse, and every one of the 50 of you students is all getting $100,000.
It's like an Ellen game
how do you,
show.
You do not
You're all
understand
winners.
that how
Then you dance.
what kind of good PR you would get if you did something like that. Like, you're talking about $100,000. They made $10 billion in revenue
No,
last year. Like,
Mike,
it's an accounting error.
Mike, you are so right about the dystopian nature of as America falls apart. Let's have a game show at halftime at the center of the spectacle where people who really are needy fight for the right to an education.
I could help.
Did you-
I could help both of them, but no, I want to entertain myself first. Here, fight for this money.
more chips
They
for
can have all of
everybody.
them.
Money will only go to the person who's better at the skill.
How
Like,
far-
what are you doing?
How far are we from the competition become just grab a pool cue, break it in half, and throw it in the middle and say, who wants the scholarship the worst?
Bore on the floor.
Yeah, the whole thing is bore on the floor.
By the way, Justin Fields right now is third all-time Bears rushing list for quarterbacks. Jim Harbaugh is second. Bobby Douglas is first. He'll pass Harbaugh this year, okay? Harbaugh played there 7 years. Justin Fields is in his
18
second
games.
season. It'll pass Bobby Douglas late
It sounds
next
like
season.
there's liquid in your mouth.
Yeah.
It sounds like
Kinda
you are
gross.
that Fleming.
I
What's-
feel fine. Totally fine.
What
no
is
phlegm.
happening right
Zero
now?
phlegm. I mean, I spent the entire segment looking up Justin Fields numbers with Bobby Douglas and Jim Harbaugh. That's what's happening
just
right
did
now.
it again.
I mean, I'm tired of looking this stuff up. And Chris looked it up. I was lying.
Whittingham, as Jemele Hill joins us, and I suggest you get her book Uphill. If it's not a New York Times bestseller, it should be. She has been making the book tour rounds, and she is gracious enough to make some time for us, and we will reward her with the Wheel of Issues. On the Wheel of Issues is Deion Sanders, Kanye West, the Georgia runoff, and Boosie feuding with Gabrielle Union. Let's spin the Wheel of Issues and have Jemele tell us where it is that it lands. Can you see it from there, Jemele?
I cannot see it.
Okay, it appears to have landed on Deion Sanders going to Colorado.
All right. Woo. Tell me what I won, Dan.
You've won giving us your opinion on Deion Sanders going to Colorado.
Oh,
Congratulations.
Okay. No physical gift. Oh, wow. This is what I've always dreamed of. Listen, it's always interesting to see how quickly out of hand these discussions get because people don't ever want to account for nuance and layers. And there's a lot of layers here. Let me just say first off, because I feel like if you're even slightly critical of how things happened or other issues surrounding this, that people are labeling you not just a hater, but somebody who doesn't want to see someone progress into a job, especially a Black coach, when there's now Deion's the 14th Black coach at the Division I or FBS level. So this was absolutely, from a career standpoint, the right move for him to make. This is what happens in college football. You go to a program, you make it successful for a few years, and then you leave. We see coaches do this all the time. So he did not do anything that was outside the norm of what happens in college football. However, it is a lot different because of who we're talking about. We're talking about Jackson State University, a historically Black college. And I think, we know that when coaches are taking over programs and jobs, there's a bit of salesmanship that goes on there. They know and are very aware of the fact that other recruits are watching, that they're trying to generate enthusiasm around the program. But in this case, I think it was taken much more seriously because of, and much more literally, I should say, because of not only how well Deion sold this, but also given the feeling that at a lot of HBCU institutions, they know that they have a very storied, proud, a history when it comes to college football. Like college football wouldn't look like it looks today if not for HBCUs, because so many great athletes were able to be at their greatest at HBCUs because they had no other place to go. So we know what that history and that legacy means. Obviously, because of the advent of integration, we've seen how much things have changed. And as a result, HBCUs lost a lot. They lost a lot, the ability to maintain and attract top players. So there's this sense of always being told you're not good enough, right? Always being told that you're not deserving of certain things. HBCUs are very underfunded. A lot of their athletic budgets barely are better than the top high school budgets, okay? Jackson State's athletic budget is $4 million, okay? Compare that to, say, a University of Texas that has like $200+ million athletic budget. Most of their budgets aren't even as good, not most, all of them are not even as good as Ivy League athletic budgets. So they're already dealing from a sense of not being able to compete, of not being considered good enough, of not being attractive enough. And here you have someone who comes in and says, God told me to be here. God told me that I was supposed to rebuild not just Jackson State, but HBCUs in general. We have to build Black. We have to build Black institutions. He's saying all the right things. He's hitting all the right notes. He's touching all the right emotional points. And then bam, 3 years later, he does exactly what other college coaches do. But this one hurts more because of who he did it to and what it means to them. And so I don't blame people who want to celebrate Deion Sanders for moving on to the next level, for getting an opportunity that, by the way, never happens to head coaches who coach Black college football. You never see Power 5 institutions come and raid the talent, the coaching talent at HBCUs. It does not happen. So now there's some reasons, obviously, to celebrate him getting the opportunity. But on the other side of it, yes, people are going to be hurt because of what historically Black colleges mean, how they're trying to build, and because there is a different sense of community at a Black college than it is other institutions. So there's room, honestly, for both feelings, for both celebration and hurt.
Where do you stand?
I stand on the side of not always feeling like you have to hardcore go one way or the other. I understand both of them, but I think the larger issue for me is that we need to look at why this system is set up and why it's this way. All right. So Why is it that when Deion Sanders got to Jackson State, the facilities look like they look? Why is it that any coach in America has to be in charge of a program in a city that doesn't even have running or clean water? That's what we need to look at, is like all these environmental and systemic issues that have put HBCUs in the position that they're in. We need to be asking a lot of these FBS institutions, why don't you ever get some of your coaches, or rarely get some of your head coaches from HBCU institutions? Why did it take somebody being maybe the best to ever play at their position, having this bombastic, charismatic personality, why does it take a Deion Sanders to get you to take some of the coaches seriously that are in this league, right? Like, why does that have to be the case? So I prefer to look at the why and the context of things, as opposed to being like somebody is good or bad.
Is it fair to say that historically black colleges, that where we are in 2022 with the evolution of segregation, is something like what you're talking about? You're not going to have segregation reveal itself the way that it did with the Negro Leagues, but this is in the ballpark for 2022 when you get into not having funds. And, I just remember so clearly Anquan Bolden saying where he was from, that there were 40 people. He was the state basketball player, I think, in Florida, in basketball and football. And he's like, I had 40 friends who were better than I was. Like, we don't know what's happening at some of these schools because it's 2022 segregation. Is that fair?
Yeah, no, that's very fair. I mean, before Deion got there, Jackson State hadn't had an NFL player, I believe, in 12 years. I mean, that's kind of absurd. And so I think these are factors and elements that have to be considered in this discussion, is that why aren't more of these schools on the radar for both the NFL? And this is not to say it doesn't happen at all. Like, we see stories all the time. You're watching, football on a Sunday, and then you find out that somebody went to an HBCU. But why is this not considered a good enough pipeline? And I think a lot of it has to do with perception. And even, this whole idea of separate but equal has never existed in this country, because, the not just the separation. When they say separation, they meant separation of funds. Like, if HBCUs were given the same kind of access to capital that a lot of predominantly white institutions were given, then we might be talking about something different. But that's not what happened. Once they got robbed of their talent, much like with the Negro Leagues, there went the economic base for athletics. It was out of the window. And so there's perceptions about HBCUs, both academically and athletically, being second or third rate. And that has fed into a lot of this conversation now that we're having about Deion Sanders. Not that this is necessarily true, but it's the fact that I think that is why it has generated animosity in some cases, because in order to build Black institutions, because of the state that many of them are in, and I'm not even just talking about what's happening in college, you have to be committed to something bigger than yourself, and know going in that you probably have to put and pour into it much differently than you would in other places.
Can you help me untangle on Kanye West and Alex Jones getting together, the social media jokes from the cartoonish, asinine ridiculousness to the very real danger of what is happening there with those two human beings?
I mean, I think everybody noticed in whatever clips that you saw, the fact that you would see Alex Jones actually looking sort of frightened about what somebody else was saying was what struck me. Like, the look on his face at certain moments was like, hey, buddy, I know I take it far, but you're like in a totally different realm of ridiculous that even frightens me. And this is a dude that just had to pay basically, or is charged with paying $1 billion to tormenting for these families of Sandy Hook that he tormented for years by calling them crisis actors and a hoax. I mean, he's one of the most reprehensible people ever put on this planet. And for him to say, I think this guy is taking it too far, there's a certain dark comedy in that exchange there. The dangerous part is this, and I don't know how we got here, Dan, but to see people sort of openly trying to make Hitler more palatable is why are we doing this? And I hate to say it, but I saw a lot of it in our community, like, wait, when did we get to the lever where we're trying to actually make it seem like Hitler wasn't as bad to Black people? I don't know what happened in our educational system, but if that's your position, where you're trying to excuse Hitler's very demonic leadership by saying like, oh, but he said this about Black people, but that's the danger of misinformation. We saw this with Deshaun Jackson when he posted that fake quote that Hitler said that Black people are the real Jews. Memo to all people out there, this never happened. It is a lie and it's fake. And the more that y'all continue to run with it, kind of the sillier you look, as if Hitler, who only believed in the pure whiteness of the Aryan race, would ever say something complimentary about Black people. And especially when you look at the history of what he did to the Afro-Germans, who he also murdered, persecuted, marginalized. He did the same things, a lot of the same things that he did to the Jews that he did to Afro-Germans. So that we're in this weird space where Hitler is suddenly becoming something that we're re-examining as something other than a monster. It wasn't on my 2022 bingo
But
card.
how did we get to a place where the discourse is this kind of stupid, though, and the divisions are such that everyone is taking? I don't understand either, Siri. I'm confused by everything that's happening in America and beyond now. But where people are taking up sides with their own people very often, no matter where the argument goes, they just.
Well, I think that's Dan. That's the $64,000 point right there, is that we have been so dug into the tribalism of who we are and our identities to the point that we're willing to make and willing to die on the dumbest of hills in order to defend that protectionism that we feel like that we need to have over our identities. I get it, at a time where a lot of identities are under attack legally, socially. I understand this. I mean, as we're talking right now, there's a debate happening in the Supreme Court about whether or not a web designer should have to design websites for people in the LGBTQ plus community, which is, again, we're right back to square one. Like, really? Like a website? That's where we are? But unfortunately, because of how polarizing we are constantly engaging in these completely stupid and demoralizing arguments because people are so scared about what's happening under the attack of identity largely in this country.
Speaking of which, dumb arguments, because you went viral earlier this week with an old clip talking to your friend Gabrielle Union about Boosie Badazz, who's been really going after the Wade family and going after 12-year-old Zaya. And what can you tell us about everything that's happened there? Because over the last couple of days, Boosie has accused Wade of being gay, and Gabrielle Union just continues to protect or try to protect her daughter.
I will only answer this question if Stugotz can name me one Boosie Badazz song. Can he name me one? Can he do it?
That's it.
Boosie Badazz.
Yeah,
song.
That's not. That's,
Feeling me.
No, you can't do it, Stugotz.
Wipe me down. Wipe me down.
I know someone.
What you got? How you name one?
I mean, "Wipe Me Down" is basically an anthem. All right, it's like one of the greatest club anthems ever created. So that is what Boosie Badazz is known as. But to answer your question, Dan, what people have to understand, that there's a history there, that for some reason Boosie cannot stay away from talking about the Wades, how they raised their children. And he's done some questionable parenting himself. Everybody can look up what that is. So that makes it even more ironic's not a strong enough word, that he would be attacking somebody else about their parenting, considering what a lot of people saw what he did with his own child on social media. So listen, that was a year-old conversation. It was when Gabby was on her book tour, and she asked me to moderate a conversation with her about what was in her book, and her follow-up memoir, I should say, because this was her second book. And in it, she discussed, talking about Zaya. And the Wades period have been under attack for so long about how they have chosen to support their daughter. and chosen to support their daughter in a public way. Because there's even a story behind that. I actually put up the full clip on my YouTube page because I knew that people would probably take that completely either out of context or didn't understand where that conversation was coming from. But, Zaya got publicly outed. Like, people that have this idea that the Wades have been somehow using Zaya as some kind of public relations tool, and that is not the case. They've been just very intentional about creating safe spaces for her, making sure she knows that she's well supported. And it's a shame that, D Wade had to get to the point where he had to turn the comments off of her Instagram, which when I had a conversation with him for the Netflix documentary on the Redeem Team, he told me that then. But, they've been under attack for quite some time. And one of their main attackers has been Boosie. This was one of the rare, if not maybe the first time, she's actually responded despite all the horrible, crass, and awful things that he said about her, D Wade, and Zaya and their entire family. So to me, she had more than the right to return fire, so to speak, because of the way that he has vilified and talked about her in public, and not just her, but Lil Nas X. I mean, it's very clear he seems to have a real issue with this community because he's constantly denigrating and using his platform to be extremely bigoted toward a particular group of people. So, hey man, she fired a shot back. I mean, and she's trying to protect her daughter and create some environment of security around her so that she knows that she has the full entire support of her parents. And I don't see anything wrong with her choosing to defend her child.
Jemele, this might be a tough one for you to answer, a tricky one. Why are people such assholes?
A lot of people have some unhealed trauma. Let me give you the psychotherapist answer. But I think, there's just generally, especially today, people are a lot of times very insecure about who they are. There is a lot of unfortunate capital that people get out of just unprovoked meanness. The other thing too is that probably 50% of the problems or the assholery that we see would be solved if people just minded their damn business. Like this Boosie Badazz situation. Nobody was telling him, hey, talk about the Wades. Like, nobody wanted to hear his opinion. Nobody cared about his opinion. He was like, here, let me find out a way that I can be an asshole today. And unfortunately, a lot of people have that mentality and that spirit of meanness.
Follow up. Are the Vikings for real? Are they?
Yes, dude. Yes, you guys. That was a perfect transition to what we were talking about. Yes. The Vikings are for real until Kirk Cousins has to play in prime time.
There it is, the qualifier we all offer. I admire Dwyane and Gabrielle Union so much, and I wanted to ask you about. Dwyane is very public, very vocal about, this is how I love this woman. I follow her. I am not about, I have to be masculine man, guy who's tough guy, and all the time. I'm telling you that I didn't learn how to love until I decided to follow this woman. And other men judge him for that, judge him unfavorably for that, when I think there's like real wisdom in men putting down their pride and following women who are better than we are.
Yeah, and it's kind of crazy to me because I guess I've spent so much time around them that I am often floored by the perception of their marriage and their relationship, which is so not like how people think that it is that these are two people who love on each other pretty hard. And they have given each other an incredible amount of emotional support. They're both incredible partners to each other. And a man doting on his wife publicly, a man, especially, and it's not just his wife. Like, we have to understand the nuance of this. We have a black man publicly doting on a black woman in a way in which, frankly, black women are often not doted on that publicly. And the fact that people would find it offensive, the fact that people would use that as a way to attack D Wade's character tells you everything about how some people feel about black women, to be honest. Because I think that's driving a lot of the narrative and conversation around their relationship, that a man a black man doting on a black woman is seen as her being in charge of him or overruling him, or him being soft, or him not, being the one who is, the one taking charge of the relationship. And that says a lot about how people view not just relationships, but a lot about how they think the dynamic should be between black men and black women.
Beyond that, Jemele, they're handling something that you might say to yourself, well, love is simple. Parental love is simple. But they're handling something that is difficult in the most loving, accepting, understanding way, that if a parent can give a child anything beyond love to help with confidence, to help with support during formative years, the grace that couple is handling all of that with publicly when there is no playbook on that, and Dwyane and Gabrielle Union have to overcome whatever patterns are in their family history, whatever we have that doesn't look like acceptance, and they are just hugely loving in a way that is breathtaking to me.
Well, the one of the secrets, I think, to why that is, one, I think they both have such a great sense of themselves, and they've done a lot of work on themselves individually. And they understand what this moment calls for, because what a lot of people don't understand is that Zaya's going to grow up. And if you talk to anybody who's been, anybody who's the child of anyone, you remember how your parents treat you in the moments where you needed the most safety and security. You remember it for the rest of your lives. And what you would hope every parent would want is to not scar their children in a way that would permanently emotionally damage them. And they're doing everything they can to make sure that doesn't happen during this very sensitive time. The other part of this that is truly wonderful, that people obviously out there don't get to see because they don't know them intimately, is that Zaya is such a rock star. I mean, as the elders say, this child has been here before. And she has a maturity, a sense of herself, an assurance about her that is well beyond what her age represents. Like Gab told me a very funny story. I think she even said it in our conversation about our book that is from that same time where they were taking this clip from, about how Zaya told both her and Dwyane that they had a year to get her pronoun right. She's like, you have a year to get the pronoun right. And after that, basically, you're going to see me go off if y'all don't, because I've given you time to get used to this and everything else. And even as the fuller version of the clip that, beyond the couple sentences that everybody's focused on, she starts by telling the story about how when Zaya came to them and said that, she was ready to come out, they were trying to walk her delicately through the process. And she went up, they're thinking okay, this is a process that could take some time. And no, she immediately went upstairs and told her brothers everything. And they were like, oh, you meant right now, right in this moment, you're ready to come out. And so their family dynamic is really wonderful and healthy. And it's what you would hope any child would have in their home, which is beyond safety and security and emotional support, but just the ability to be themselves in the most whole and full ways. Because if you're allowed that in your home environment, it allows you and gives you the confidence to show up that way in the world. And that's what they're preparing her for, is a world that is not going to be what they've established in their home. But they know once she leaves that enclave that she'll have the confidence and the courage to be fully who she is and not worry about how people will react to her.
Always a pleasure, Jemele. Again, I tell the audience, Uphill is the name of the book. It is doing very well. It should be. Her story is extraordinary, and she has been a great journalist for a long time. Thank you, Jemele.
And Stugotz, I'm very disappointed you didn't ask me more football questions, but we'll deal with that at another time.
Listen, baby steps. I stuck around for the entire thing this time, okay?
You did.
Yes.
You did. And you even uttered sentences.
Yeah.
I'm so proud of you.
Thank you,
Stugotz.
Jemele.
See you later, Jemele.
Grow. See y'all.
There are very few people in the world that I can say this about, but if I were playing word association and you give me this man's name, Thomas Jones, the thing I immediately think, I can't be the only one that this happens with, Thomas. Before any of your other accolades, what I think to myself is biceps. big giant biceps. It's you and Michael Pittman are the guys I associate with biceps. So let me begin here, and thank you for joining us. There's an 8-part docuseries done by Prime Video, Life After. It's following 12 retired NFL players as they navigate life after their playing careers, and Thomas is one of them. But was there anyone in the league at the time? I don't know if you did any comparisons on this where you're like, that guy's biceps better than my biceps.
I don't know. There were a lot of guys with big biceps in the NFL during those times, but I would have to say the one person that I was constantly in competition with was my brother, my friend, and also teammate Michael Pittman. We had some pretty intense bicep, tricep workout days in Arizona and Tampa, so I guess he would come close.
Well, tell me what that is. Tell me what it is that makes the perfect bicep. Tell me what is what you would do with dumbbells, for example, because I imagine you were throwing around a substantive amount of weight.
Yeah, it's just balancing out the tricep and the bicep. I think when people think arms and big biceps, they think just that bicep, but the bicep isn't even the majority of your arm. It's the tricep. So a lot of people neglect the triceps, thinking that they want to have this big bicep here in the middle, but it's actually your tricep that gives your arm the most girth. So a lot of tricep push downs, a lot of what we call skull crushers with the curl bar, a lot of dips, weighted dips with heavy weight. So you put a weight around your waist, and you'll do multiple dips until your back of your arms literally feel like they're about to fall off. And that's how you get Thomas Q. Jones, Michael Pittman biceps and tricep.
But give me the details, though. How many dips and what is the weight that's around your waist?
The weight usually would be maybe a 10, 15-pound dumbbell. And then as you continue to get stronger, you go up in weight. So that 10, 15-pound dumbbell now becomes a 20, 25-pound dumbbell. Usually you do less reps with more weight because it's heavier, but it's more intense. So you're constantly pushing yourself to get as strong as you possibly can. And that helps continue to build the muscle around your triceps and biceps when it comes to just arm curls. Any type of exercise that's going to help you with your curls. It's the same concept.
Do you ever walk around the house and just curl random objects?
No, I've never done that. When I'm at home, I don't want to curl anything. I'm usually too tired to curl anything. But I've lost significant bicep mass since I retired 10 years ago.
Bullshit. Bullshit.
But
it's bullshit. I'm looking at you. I'm looking at you. You're wearing another one of those extra medium shirts, which I imagine is it's the only thing that you have in the closet. And it's bullshit what you're saying.
No. I have a few tailored suits that I wear out, but at home, I'm definitely comfortable in this is one of my friend's clothing lines. So I had to wear this. It's called Beast Behavior. You can actually get some of the apparel at beastbehavior.com. So I'm always trying to represent my friends in their clothing lines. But no, honestly, I think some of this is just residual bicep residue from 12 years of the NFL.
You can't buy normal shirts, correct? Or you couldn't buy normal, yes, t-shirts, but dress shirts, there's just no way that you could get the proper fit without a tailor, correct?
Well, usually I can wear an 18, size 18 dress shirt, 17 and a half. It's a little fitted on my arms. Now, a lot of times my suit jackets, I do have to have the arms tailored. So I wear 44 long, but the arms will be just too tight. So I usually have to get every suit jacket tailored to fit my arms. So that is an area where having the biceps and triceps can get a little tricky.
What did you find interesting, and why did you participate in this 8-part docuseries? I've told people before that it's really hard to explain how hard it is for an athlete who has been a symbol for youth and vitality to grieve the death of what used to be his identity in his early 30s. Most of us do not retire from the thing we love at that age. So why did you participate in Prime Video's 8-part docuseries, and what did you find interesting in the viewing of Life After?
Well, I participated because this was my story. I played 12 years in the NFL. I dedicated the majority of my life to football. I started playing organized football at 8, and I retired at 33. So football has always been a huge part of my life. I've always been a student of the game as well as a player. And so when I retired, I didn't have anything that I was as passionate about. And I knew that there were a lot of other guys that were in the same position as me. And a lot of us struggle once you retire because you're trying to find that next thing. Most people don't retire from something they love at 25, 26, 30 years old. You still have your whole life ahead of you. But the mentality you have to be an NFL player is that you're going to play forever. That's the mentality that you have to have. And unfortunately, that just isn't the case. So I decided to be a part of this because I'm also a producer, an executive producer on the project. And I felt like it was very important to try to tell some of these guys' stories in regards to how they transitioned from the love of the game of football to their second act in life.
I've read quotes from you where you're talking about, and I don't know how this happened, whether the freedom that comes from leaving the discipline of football leaves you at 8 a.m. with a Corona in your hand when you're not even a drinker. Can you explain to us what was happening there and what you were thinking to yourself as you've got the freedom all of a sudden at 8 a.m.? That's something you could not have had in football very often. And you find yourself, well, what am I doing? I'm having drinks at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, I found myself trying to find myself. That's literally what I was doing. It was like, usually at 8 o'clock, I'm in a team meeting, or I'm in the weight room, or I'm getting up, getting dressed, getting ready to go to pregame meal for a noon game on Sunday. So to not have that stare me in the face, and like you said, the freedom to do whatever I want to do, I was lost. I was trying to figure out, what do I do now? What do I do next? Something that I've done so militantly for so long. It's almost like I was kicked out of the club, and all my friends are still there. So I'm standing outside the club, and I'm like, I guess I'll wait for them to come out because I can't go back in. So I went through a stage of depression, to be honest, trying to figure out who I was going to be, what I was going to be ambitious about again. And the only thing that I found that made me feel better was alcohol. I wasn't a drinker. I was more of a social drinker when I played. I was very, very detailed in my training and workouts. And so alcohol was something that just wasn't on my menu. But it was something that I found waking up in the morning and having a Corona at 6 o'clock in the morning, and then continuing to have those during the day, that at least helped me emotionally deal with the withdrawal of not having the actual game of football and not being in the locker room or around that environment. So it was a pretty tough time for me for about a year until I was fortunate enough to actually find Hollywood acting, producing. And then that's kind of when I started to make my positive shift.
Given the demands of football, given how hard it is to get to the top 1% of the 1% who are competing for money in that field, had you ever considered the who am I before retiring? Like, where am I? What am I? Had you even thought about those things before that?
The only time I was thinking, who am I? And this was still football related, was after my short stint in Arizona. Where things didn't go well. I was the 7th overall pick. I went to Arizona, and we didn't have a good team. There were a lot of expectations on me to come in and help change the organization, and we just didn't have the nucleus of players to do that. And so I didn't play well. I wasn't really liked that much by the organization. I didn't like the organization that much. It just wasn't the football experience I was used to, coming from being a 2-time state champion in high school football and an All-American in high school to being a consensus All-American in college. I had never suffered that much as a football player. So I had to question, who am I? If I don't get my act together and figure this thing out, I'm going to go down as one of the guys that just didn't make it. And so I had to figure out what I wanted then. but that was still within the world of football. Once I retired is when I realized, okay, football is no longer, you no longer have the option to be a football player. You no longer have the option for that to be your identity. So now what are you going to do? And so that was the struggle, was finding something that I was as passionate about and meant something to me as much as football. And I just couldn't find it on my own. I needed help.
For those who don't know, by the way, he is 26th all-time in career rushing yards, ahead of Eddie George, Tiki Barber, Marshawn Lynch, Clinton Portis, Sean Alexander. He was a tough, rugged runner for many years. So whatever it is that happened in Arizona, you were able to overcome it. Were you in retirement, when you talked to other guys about what was happening, did you find a sense of community in your sadness? And because I imagine retiring from football was harder than playing football for you.
Yeah, it was. It was very hard to retire. It was very hard to let that environment go, that relatable environment to guys who are going through the exact same situation as you, the same stakes. You win, you're a hero. You lose, you get fired. We all understand the consequences, no matter what background you come from, whatever culture you come from. We know these are the rules, and so there's a sense of comfortability there. And once you're kind of taken out of that environment, then it's like, well, I can't relate to someone necessarily who didn't play 12 years in the NFL, because it's not necessarily going to be the same conversations. And then the people who I was friends with and family and all this other stuff while I played, a lot of those people started to become people I didn't know. And I started to realize that it was my football identity. It was who I was as a football player that caused them to want to be around me and show me the love that they were showing me during that time. Because once I retired, it was almost like they retired from being friends and family at the same time. So it was a crazy transition, psychologically and emotionally that I had to make, and I didn't even know that I wasn't even prepared for it. That's what was so crazy. It just hit me out of nowhere. And I did find some family in other guys, but usually what tends to happen is when guys retire and they go through these situations where they're trying to find themselves, they do it alone. And a lot of times it doesn't end up well, because they don't know how to tell anyone, because for however many years of our lives we've been taught, don't be vulnerable, don't show weakness, don't open up, be tough, be a man, all these things that come with being a football player. And so that's why this project, being able to tell other guys' stories, that some of them struggled like I did, some of them didn't struggle like I did, but just the collective idea around what it's like as a retired NFL player to transition was very, very interesting to me, and the reason why I wanted to be a part of this.
The name of the project, again, is Life After, Prime Video's 8-part docuseries. You've gotten what kind of rewards from acting? What have you found fun or super challenging about acting?
I found that acting is very, very similar to football in a lot of ways, and that's the reason why I think once I tried it, because I didn't search for roles. I wasn't like, hey, let me try acting. I was introduced to this through a couple of people that I knew, and I was bored at that time. That's when I was drinking, and I was like, hey, what do I have to lose? Who cares? And I tried taking on a small role in the project and coming on as a producer. I didn't know necessarily what I was doing. I hadn't had any acting classes. I hadn't produced anything in the film and TV space, but I was always up for something new. And so once I performed, Clifton Powell, who's a legendary actor, he was my scene partner, and he said, "You have some raw talent. You should pursue this full time." And he's very assertive and very what's the word?
Persistent.
Yes, very, very persistent. So every time he would tell me, have you reached out to any actor studios or, and I'm like, no, I haven't. He was, like you said, persistent. He would just say, boy, you need to call these people. I gave you the phone number to the studio. I gave you the agent's number. You need to call, So eventually I was like, okay, let me call him. And I did. So I reached out, got into an actor studio in South Florida. That's where I lived in Miami. And then from there, I just started to gain more interest in it. And then I made the choice in 2014 to actually move to Hollywood and pursue it full time. And it was the best decision that I could have ever made, especially as a retired NFL player.
What are the details of how bad the drinking got, or where and how did you realize that you had a little bit of a problem with it?
I realized that I had a problem with it because everything I did felt better if I was drinking. So I wasn't training for a Pro Bowl season as I was when I was in the NFL. But if I would go to the gym to play basketball, I would have to drink the Corona before I went. That just wasn't who I was. And so I realized once I started acting, because once initially I started acting, I was still drinking. But I realized once I moved to LA and I enrolled in an actor studio, Ivana Chubbuck's studio, which is a very, very prestigious actor studio, I realized this is like football. The similarities was very high stakes, very professional, very organized, very expensive. And the people in the classes and the teachers were no nonsense like my NFL coaches. And so as I started to realize, like, I'm a part of an organization now where the stakes are high. I mean, these are actors who have been in Juilliard, who have majored in drama. I'm a 12-year football NFL veteran that has no acting experience. You know, I need to get my stuff together if I'm going to even be able to compete in these classes and keep up in these scenes with my scene partners. So that was when I realized, man, you know, I'm back in an environment that's like football, where if I want to be successful and compete, I have to focus and I have to use the principles that made me a successful football player, and use those to help make me a successful actor.
You mentioned losing family and friends. Is there anything that hurt the way that did?
No, honestly, no, because I mean, you hear stories all the time of, you know, people that truly aren't there for, you know, their friend or their family, whoever comes into money or comes into success. But you never think that you're going to be one of those people. And I do think, you know, it's an adjustment across the board. It's an adjustment when you come into money, and it's an adjustment when people don't have access to that money anymore. It's an equal adjustment on both ends. You know, when someone becomes a celebrity that you've known your whole life, how do you see them as a celebrity when, especially if they don't act like one? Me, I never really acted like a celebrity. I've always been myself. I know my status. I know who I am. But that has nothing to do with my day-to-day life. You could work at a restaurant, or, you know, you could work in Hollywood, and you're going to get the same treatment from me, the same respect from me, the same, you know, grace. So a lot of times people take that as weakness, you know. So no, I would say that just certain situations that I would have never expected to be in with people really hurt. And acting helped me get through that as well, because I was able to put all of those vulnerable emotions into my characters based off of the acting technique that I was being taught. And it helped me grow, and it helped me evolve, and helped me use some of those painful moments and painful relationships, and it helped me use those and put that into my characters.
Do you have one that you remember more than the others of gutting you, where you were like, oh, really? I didn't think it was like that.
No, I think there are multiple situations. And they each hurt equally because each situation had a different meaning, different memories attached, you know, different love attached. So I wouldn't say that there's one in particular, but just overall knowing that once I retired, it was like, whoa, you know, I guess now that there's no more tickets to games or flights or restaurants to eat at or cars to ride in. Now all of a sudden it's, well, thanks, and good luck.
The name of the 8-part docuseries is Life After. It is on Prime Video. You have said that you're donating your brain to the Concussion Legacy Foundation. 12 years of football has done what to the body at 44 years old?
It's done a lot. It's done a lot. The thing about, they say football is a young man's game. So when you play over a decade, you still think you're a young man. So you don't see or think about the physical toll because at that point you're a trained warrior. If you play, if you start getting into 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, a decade, 2 decades in the NFL, you almost psychologically made yourself immune to injuries and pain because it's just a part of the game. Being tired, being sore, bleeding somewhere on your arm or your leg, or these are all the MRIs and X-rays. These are just things that come with it. You're not thinking in MRI as a serious, because it's just you go to get an MRI and you're like, hopefully it's not as bad, so I can play this week. Versus, I hope it's not as bad. I hope it's not as bad, so we can fully heal. I'm not expected to be 100% ever. If I can be by the end of the season, if I can be at 65%, going into the playoffs, 65, maybe get a couple rest days during the week, where I'm not really taking too many reps. I'm ready for the game. I'm good. I'm ready to go out there and rush for 200 yards.
How crazy that is now. You can, at 44 years old, you now know, looking back at that man, that man was nuts. That man had to not consider consequences. He had to spend his life not thinking about what's it like at 44, because I got yards to get at 24.
Yeah, well, why am I going to think about 44 when my backup is trying to take my job at 24? I'm one missed game away from losing my job, losing my career, losing my dream, putting food on the table for my family. I didn't have kids at the time, but if I did, losing out on potentially, putting diapers on my kid, so that's how serious it is. It's that serious. And I went through multiple controversial situations where I had to play hurt on multiple teams. That's why I was on 5 different teams. Each team, it felt like they were trying to bring someone in to take my job. So I'm like, well, I can't afford to not produce, and I can't afford to be hurt. So for someone like me, who constantly had to continue to reinvent myself on each team and earn my respect with the team, the fans, the city, and put up numbers, it was equally that for me. It was actually more so that for me because I had no room for error, especially being hurt.
What do you regard as the greatest pain, not emotional pain, but physical pain that you've known in football?
Most physical pain. When I was in Arizona, my rookie year, I actually was hit, and early in the season, and I didn't realize it, but I think it was my 3rd game, my rookie season, and Darren Sharper caught me on an outside zone play, and he hit me here square, bam, helmet,
chest.
And I remember that hit. Say it again.
Chest, right in the middle of the chest.
Yeah, right here. And I knew I would gotten hit because I boom, and I knocked my breath out, and and obviously I popped up like, okay, that's enough. But a few weeks later, I started having shortness of breath, and I actually went to the Arizona Cardinals staff and told them that I couldn't breathe, and they sent me to all these different doctors, cardiologists, and gave me an albuterol inhaler. Everything was wrong completely. First thing they should have done was send me to a chiropractor, but that's too much like the right thing to do. So at the time, the Arizona Cardinals medical staff, I think because I continued to tell them I couldn't breathe, they just said, hey, I don't know. We don't know what it is. So fortunately, I found a chiropractor on my own. And the pain that I was having was, it felt like my three of my the rib heads had come out. And so it went from me having shortness of breath to every time I took a deep breath to feel like I was being stabbed in my chest 24 hours a day. And this was for 7-8 months straight, until I found the chiropractor that actually told me, hey, your rib heads are out. Let me put them back in. But by that time I had been breathing so shallow because it was hurting so bad to breathe, that I developed a shallow breathing pattern. So it took me a long time to break that. Matter of fact, literally over the last 2 years, I finally started to breathe back to normal. But that pain of taking a deep breath and feeling like I was being stabbed I will never forget how that feels. I would never wish that on anybody.
Holy shit, that sounds like a nightmare. That you couldn't breathe. I don't imagine sleeping was real good. Your survival mechanism changes the way you breathe, and no doctors can tell you what's the matter. And you're playing through it?
Well, you have to play through it because they've sent you to everybody. They sent you to the Cleveland Clinic. They've sent you everywhere. And everyone's saying, we don't know what's wrong with him. So then they send me to a psychiatrist because now I'm having panic attacks. So, and if you don't go to the psychiatrist now, it's conduct detrimental to the team. So you get fined. So it was the most bizarre situation I've ever been in my life. I wouldn't wish that situation on anybody, but what it did was it made me realize, hey, you have to take care of yourself, even as an NFL player. Get your own training staff, get your own doctors, get your own chiropractors, pay for your own massages and treatments on your own outside of what the NFL is going to do, because they're going to do as much as they can to keep you on the field. They're not going to do as much as they can do to keep you alive.
What can you tell us about the panic attacks? How long were you enduring the panic attacks?
Oh, this was 8-9 months of, because the worst part about it is I didn't know what was wrong. I didn't know what was wrong. And I was they gave me medicine because they didn't know either. So they're like, well, maybe it's a psychological thing. So I had boxes full of Paxil, Xanax. But something inside said, don't take that. There's something going on. I don't know what it is, but I know that I'm not crazy. Not saying that people that take Paxil, Xanax are crazy, but I'm saying the way that they were trying to make me look as though I was crazy, I know I'm not. I can't breathe, and there's something physically going on inside. And what happened was the ribs were compressed against my vagus nerve. The vagus nerve goes from here all the way down to your stomach. It controls your breathing and digestion. So the ribs were compressed against the vagus nerve, similar to if you have a garden hose and you have your foot on the hose, no water can come out. So it went from me having shortness of breath to feeling like I was being stabbed in the chest to me having to feel like I needed to burp to get relief. So it was like a domino effect, physically and psychologically, that I was like, I don't know what's wrong with me. I don't know if I'm just going to die in my sleep. Like, it was very traumatic, very, very traumatic for me. My family went through it. My mother, she had to come to Arizona and she's just like, I don't know what's wrong with my son. But I suffered in silence because that's what we do as NFL players. We suffer in silence. I didn't go to the media. I didn't make a big deal out of it. I just said, hey, you know what? I still have to play because I'm a football player and I have to figure this out on my own. Fortunately, I did. But yeah, that was a pretty tough time. Tough time.
Holy shit. Also, beyond that, though, you will be made a little bit crazy by the sleep deprivation, will you not? Like, if you're having panic attacks, if you're exhausted, if you don't know why you can't breathe and breath is the source of life, like, that really sounds like an unbelievable prison, man.
Yeah, I was addicted to Ambien because that was the only thing that would help me sleep. So, yeah, there's a lot of things that go on over a 12-year NFL career to get over 10,000 yards and all of the accolades and statistics. It just doesn't happen because you're just lucky. You to accomplish certain things in the NFL, you choose the accomplishment over your health, over your well-being. And that's what I did. And then most times you suffer for it once you're 44, getting 50, whether it's CTE, whether it's a hip replacement, whether it's a knee replacement, whether it's liver issues because you've taken so many painkillers and Toradol shots. Yeah, you don't get the acclaim and the mystique of being a 10,000-yard rusher without consequences.
How much were you doing in the name of pain killing? How many Toradol shots? How much Ambien? How much of that were you doing?
It was a routine. It was a routine. It wasn't even. It's not even something that I can like count. It's like concussions. Like when people think concussions, they think, bam, knocked out. That's one form of a concussion. But you know, if I'm playing the Dolphins and I'm just throwing out some football stuff here, you know, it's 200 jet protection. On 200 jet protection, I'm the running back. I'm the H. My job is to block the Mike linebacker to the Sam linebacker to strong safety to strong corner to free safety to weak corner. And I know, and I'm playing the Dolphins, you know, Zach Thomas is lined up in the middle. Zach Thomas is 5'10", 250. No neck, all just shoulders, cowboy collar and helmet. And he can't hold his water. So I know before the snap, he's blitzing full speed. He's not going to run around me. He's not going to jump over me. He's going to try to run through me every time. So I'm already prepared for that. So I've taken Tylenol before the game because I know that I'm going to have a headache once I hit him in that A gap. I also know that I'm probably going to see stars or I'm probably going to see black spots after initial contact. He's probably going to see stars. He's probably going to see black spots after initial contact. I might see two of him after I open my eyes, but I do know that it's 2-minute drill and I have to line back up and I have to listen to the next play and I have to get back in my position and I have to be ready to, if it's 3rd and 2, I need to get to 2 yards so I can, on a flat route so I can get the first down. So there's just no time to think of anything that would happen if you bumped your head and you were like, whoa, I don't know, let me sit down, I don't feel good. That's not the life of an NFL player. We know these things. I'm not saying it for people to pity us, but I'm just saying that's part of our reality. And those are things that you don't think about at 24, but they affect you at 44.
Sam Shields is the only football player I've ever asked, would you do it again? And he said, no, I would not do it again. Would Thomas Jones do it all again?
I've been asked that question multiple times, and I've given multiple answers. I've said no the majority of the time. But then I think about the incredible friendships and brotherhood and memories that I have. A lot of people say, well, of course you do it again. It's millions of dollars. You know, yeah, it's a lot of money, but the money we're getting paid is for what we're doing. They're not giving it to us. We're earning that money. I mean, it just comes with the job description. It's a billion-dollar industry. So what we're doing, you know, we're earning the money that we're getting, but the money can't give you a new brain if you have dementia at 40. You know, it can't buy back relationships and friendships and that are broken because of money issues or jealousy. So I always initially say no, but then I look behind me at the artwork that some fans have made, and I look around my office, and I'm like, damn. I might even play now again if I could.
You haven't mentioned the brain issue details. What is it that scares you when you think of the effects, the daily effects? Because if your answer is often no, I'm guessing it's because you're living with things at 44 that you did not think you would be living with.
Yeah, just the reality of knowing that I'm 44 and in 5 years, I might not know how to get back home by myself. There's so many guys that are struggling. You don't hear about those stories though. You hear about a few guys here or there, but you don't hear about the hundreds of guys who, and their wives and families who are struggling. Guys who don't even remember. I mean, they can't drive to the store by themselves because they won't remember how to get home. Guys that that you watch play. I was talking to Tony Dorsett in 2012. I did a panel discussion with him on the Bob Costas show. And this is someone I watched as a kid, Tony Dorsett. An incredible football player, incredible running back. And just looking at him and talking to him and looking in his eyes and just seeing the fear in his eyes as he was explaining how he can't get back home by himself. He can't go anywhere without having someone come with him because he'll get lost driving back home. Someone that you look at as a superhero, that's his reality. Yeah, that's scary. But also, I'm at a point now where I know the damage is done, and I wouldn't be surprised if something happened. I'm not surprised anymore. I'm not scared anymore. I just live one day at a time, and whatever happens, it's the consequences of what I did.
Life After is the name of the project. It's 8 parts. It's a docuseries. Prime Video is where you find it. Appreciate the honesty. Appreciate your story. Appreciate your work, Thomas. Thank you for being on with us.
Thank you, brother. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
It's Don't Worry, Darling. We watched Don't Worry, Darling for Cinephobe. And I was...
How was it?
It's just like there was no game plan at all.
Wow.
It's just like, we're going to do this shit, and wouldn't it be cool if this shit happened? And, hey, do we need an ending? Not really. Just...
Billy likes your anarchy ways on Cinephobe, yes?
No, I mean, but everybody's been talking about that movie.
The movie, yeah.
Forever.
I've heard that it just doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense. Like, it has, like, there are things that happen. It's like, oh, we should keep an eye on this. It never comes up again. This
is the movie, Dan, that led to, like, the Spitgate at the premiere and the whole fighting with Shia LaBeouf and everything.
Oh, okay. So this is the center of pop culture and gossip and stuff because Olivia Wilde left Ted Lasso with Harry Styles, and no one likes each other on the set, and it's not any good. The movie's not. They're talking about it, but not for reasons that have anything to do with the movie, right?
Yes. They're talking about it for reasons that have nothing to do with the movie because of all the behind the scenes stuff, the trivia, which, by the way, next Cinephobe, not this week, but next week is going to be on that. But also, the movie itself is such a calamity, right? If it was like an okay movie and all this stuff, then we'd just be focused on the stuff. But it's like all this stuff, and also, what the hell was that movie? And the combination of the two is what kind of made the shit show of a higher order.
And Cinephobe is doing 2 hours on that?
We did 2 hours.
An emergency podcast?
Not emergency. It came back. The movie came out in September or August.
Emergency podcast, Cinephobe.
Yeah.
I like we were calling it podcast.
You don't do very recent movies, though, do you?
Typically, no, because we don't want to go to a movie theater to watch this stuff. But this one was on HBO Max because it got out of that window. And so we watched it and we did it. And this is a 2022 movie. And
Cinephobe has gotten very popular. Many of you love the comedic timings of that group of people.
Let me just say this. I know we don't talk about numbers around here, but oh my God, this is like Barry Bonds stuff going on. I don't know what's happening. The numbers have been amazing lately.
Really?
Oh yeah, stupidity.
Like God Bless Football numbers?
No. We're blowing God Bless Football out of the water.
No, football.
That one too. Look, let me tell you something. Bad Boys 2 is like, I don't want to say numbers.
No,
I'm not going to say numbers.
Cinephobe has gotten very popular, but your Star Wars stuff continues to ruin Mystery Crate.
Does not ruin. I got millions of tweets, Dan.
It also, well, you haven't. It also
millions of tweets about the series.
No, about like how they love our reviews.
Get out of here.
It is the most polarizing thing we do, is putting that in the Mystery Crate feed. I think my opinion doesn't matter, but I think there's a time and a place for every type of show on Mystery Crate. Some people love Amin's recaps, and some people say that they want Maximum Anarchy on Mystery Crate.
By the
every
way,
Friday.
look real quick, Billy.
Yeah.
For those of you over there in the shipping container, you're welcome. Oh, I'm sorry for giving you guys
I
an
love
out
it.
from
that's
having
why
a report.
that's why we don't
Thank
argue
you.
with you over it. I mean, that's why I said my opinion. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it.
Do it in my Greenberg voice.
I don't know anything. I don't know about anybody. I like when Amin does Mystery Crate because then we don't have to do it.
I have an idea.
Jimbo.
Guys, what do you guys think about
Jimbo
this?
Greenberg.
It was a mix. I'm totally with you.
I think that we should start a new Mystery Crate series where we are listening to Amin's Mystery Crates about the show and then breaking down Amin's podcast.
Love it.
I am in 1,000% support of that.
Wow.
And we can call it Mysteryer Crate.
Put it on the poll, please, at LeBatard Show. Chris Cody, is Amin and his Star Wars obsession actively ruining everything good about Mystery Crate?
What are we calling it?
Mysteryer Crate. Put an ER at the end
Got
of
it
it.
the second
The
time.
people have grown to love Mystery Crate and those chemicals together. They don't love your Star Wars obsession.
No. Because there are people who love it and
Yeah.
love the Star Wars obsession.
It's really
There are
split,
some
Dan.
people. And to those some people, I say,
What is that?
Well said.
thank you.
What is that? That was you flipped the back of your hand at them and made not a raspberry sound, but just something that sounded like you had a lot of spit on your lips.
A wet fart.
Really?
Oh, man.
There's like a very Nickelodeon's 1990 sound that came out of your mouth.
Thank you.
Just spit.
Amin, have you seen the Shaquille O'Neal documentary on HBO?
I have not. It's a docuseries. I want to start watching it because I feel bad criticizing it without watching it. But knowing what I know about Shaq,
Is it a sanitized version?
I can't imagine that Shaq, who is an employee of the Warner Discovery Media, whatever the hell their name is now, having a docuseries made about him that is put out on that same kind of family of platforms.
HBO Max. You're talking about. You're not going to get an honest version of Shaq, which is the one you know and is the best version for a documentary.
Absolutely.
You can't say that if you haven't seen it, but you suspect that that's so.
I suspected that so because I know how he is. I know how controlling he is of how his image is. And he has a certain way that he presents. And
Dirty Shaq is the better documentary.
Way better, way more interesting, way more human, way more actually you would connect with him more.
This is Process Shaq.
This is Process Shaq. But again, I'm going to give it a chance. I will give it a chance.
You love this dude.
Yeah.
You love who he is.
I do.
You love his personality.
I love the real him. I think the guy on TV, I like the guy on TV.
He fell into a Christmas tree yesterday.
That was
it was
great.
funny. Kenny Smith.
He was shoved into a
No,
Christmas
that had to be fake, though. You cannot move Shaq that way.
Didn't he
Like
knock
Shaq-
over a Christmas tree another year?
Yeah, he had the wire around his leg. And
Yeah, but no one pushed him. He just tripped
No,
over
that's fake.
it. Yeah.
You can't move
it's
Shaq.
all fake. It's Shaq.
When he's running, I mean, he's
No, you
already
can't move
running.
Shaq.
He's
You
Shaq.
cannot move
Tony
him.
could.
Kenny Smith does not have the strength to move him. Only Tony does. In the post.
Is it possible, Amin, knowing with what you've told us about Shaq and how he just makes things up, that he could just make things up completely for a documentary similar to like the Weird Al one?
Oh, look, if you gave Shaq free reign, he could give you some great Weird Al ones. We haven't talked about that.
Amin loved the Weird Al
I thought
biopic.
it was brilliant, right? That the guy who got famous making parodies of songs has a biopic that is a parody of biopics.
I was like slow on the uptake for that joke. I was like, this is ridiculous.
It went over our
How
head.
can you do a biopic if it's not real? And then I was like, oh, wait, he did parody songs. So I was like, oh, now I get it. It's
man.
good. Smart guy.
Favorite part is the part where he says, I'm sick of being the parody guy. I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to make my own songs, original music. And then he makes a song called Eat It. And then 2 months later, Michael Jackson makes a parody of that song called Beat It. I thought I had the Billy mind blown thing like, wow.
Jessica, are you
That's
not
some
a
writing.
Weird Al?
Was this did you guys just spoil it for me?
No, it's not. I mean, it's.
Is
He
that-
dies at the
that's
Yeah. In a shootout with a Colombian drug lord.
Jessica, are you still soaring from the fact that in a grid of death punishment that we thought was going to be very hard, that you caught 2 fish with the same line? Yeah. It's not something I've seen before. You only had 1 hook, right?
No, there were 4 hooks. I had 2. I had
Whoa,
2 fishing
Whoa,
rods.
that is cheating. That's not how you do it.
Whoa,
No.
Balco.
Yep.
It's not cheating.
Do it with 1 hook.
It's not cheating. You can have a fishing rod with multiple hooks on the line. That's what you do. You put bait on all 4 of the hooks, and that's how you catch smaller feeder fish that you then use to bait your larger hook to get bigger fish. I happened to catch actually a very large grunt fish on one of the hooks on the smaller fishing rod, and I also caught a smaller grunt fish on the same rod on the same line at the same time. So I actually went above and beyond and exceeding not only everyone's expectations, but also the punishment that I had to do for Grid of Death. Yeah. And I would like a little bit of respect, because not only did I not get any credit for it, because you assholes said my boyfriend did all the work, which he didn't.
Chris said that.
He did not.
I also am the only person here who's paid off a debt from this year's Grid of Death, other than Juju Gotti.
I dress like NSYNC. Or bad.
That's from last
She's
year.
still
NSYNC was
outside.
last
No, that was
year.
this year's my first punishment. This is what I'm thinking. Because you so far exceeded it as commissioner,
Billy now.
I feel like maybe it's almost like you paid off 2 punishments today.
What?
You know what I mean? Like, maybe then you're like attacking me, and it's like, whoa, what's happening?
A twin bill.
Billy, I think you've been a really fair commissioner, and I think you've done a really good job wrangling all the cats here, trying to get things done. And I respect your opinion. If you believe that counts as 2 punishments because it was 2 fish, I can't argue with that.
Flattery will get you everywhere. Choose one you don't want to do. You're good.
Wow. Such a shitty commissioner. You stink as the commissioner. Put it on the poll, Guillermo, at LeBatard Show, just what Stugotz asked me during the break. This is the question. Lovie Smith seems like a nice man. Would you be able to call that beard into your office and fire it to its face?
I wouldn't be able to. I mean,
at LeBatard Show, we have some sounds I want to play here. I don't know, Stugotz, if it can be topped. The sound that made Castellanos famous because it ended the career of the Brenneman's son, whose first name I forget because it's not Marty Brenneman.
Tom.
It's
T-H-O-M.
Yeah, it's a weird spelling, Dan.
It's okay. I don't remember the son's name.
It's really not, though, right? Like, because that's how you spell Thomas. It's probably how most Toms should be.
No way. Most Toms are spelled T-O-M.
No, I know that, but I'm saying Thomas is spelled T-H-O-M-A-S. So, like, Toms should be T-H-O-M, right?
Technically.
Put it on the poll, Guillermo, at LeBatard Show. Shouldn't Thomas be Tom, spelled with an H instead of Tom, where the H gets eaten? I think Billy is right on this. If you're going to shorten Thomas, it should be T-H-O-M.
Let me just publicly state I'm not siding with Tom Brenneman, but I just,
I feel like you were there.
No.
It felt like it too, Dan.
No.
It did feel like it. Thank you, Tony.
No.
Tony, it did feel like it. It felt like it. But regardless, you're in a safe space because all you were talking about was the silent H.
Yeah, no, it's actually a good point because Christopher, his nickname is Chris with an H, but you could also spell it with just C-R-I-S. And we don't do that, so maybe we should do Thom.
And don't get me started on Jack Collinsworth. There's not a Collinsworth that knows how to spell a name correctly.
Yeah. So what do you do with Tommy John? It's Tommy John? I mean...
Yes, Thom Haberstroh. It should be Thom.
Really?
Tommy John, by the way, the most comfortable underwear I've ever worn. And I'm not just saying that...
jammies. I love them.
Really? I don't know who we talk to around here. I guess we'll talk to Feldman or someone.
Mark Tank.
Yeah, I'm hoping they're coming down for Moss because I need myself some...
I need Moss Tommy John underwear.
Yeah.
There it is in Spanish. I need Moss Tommy John underwear. You can pronounce it Hispanically. Tommy John.
Tommy John.
See if they want to branch out into the Hispanic market with you as their spokesperson, bringing back the silent H and making
Tommy
it...
John. Tommy John. Necesito uno.
Sí,
Tommy
por favor,
John.
no haga tan confortable. Tommy John. Before we get to the sound, though, I believe this is the best sound that there has been anywhere in sports for 2 years. So funny that you cannot write something this funny in fiction, but I believe we might have a rival to this sound produced last night during a hockey game. But here's the original Thom Brenneman sound.
Castellanos to lead things off. Jim Day's going to be taking us the rest of the way through this game as Holland takes over on the mound. I made a comment earlier tonight that I guess went out over the air that I am deeply ashamed of. If I have hurt anyone out there, I can't tell you how much I say from the bottom of my heart. I'm so very, very sorry. I pride myself and think of myself as a man of faith. As there's a drive in a deep left field by Castellanos, it will be a home run. And so that'll make it a 4-0 ball game. I don't know if I'm going to be putting on this headset again. I don't know if it's going to be for the Reds. I don't know if it's going to be for my bosses at Fox. I'm going to apologize for the people who signed my paycheck, for the Reds, for Fox Sports Ohio, for the people I work with, for anybody that I've offended here tonight. I can't begin to tell you how deeply sorry I am. That is not who I am, and never has been. And I'd like to think maybe I could have some people that could back that up. I am very, very sorry, and I beg for your forgiveness. Jim Day will take you the rest of the way home.
It is comedically perfect.
Amazing.
Not just because right before that he had spit the acid into a microphone he didn't know was live using a homosexual slur. And then when the television cameras are back on, that apology combined with having to respect the home run in a super sad, empty pandemic stadium.
One last home run call for Thom. I mean,
as you heard his career disintegrate again in a totally empty pandemic ballpark where a home run makes no sound because there's no one there at the end of Thom Brenneman's career.
I find it hard that you have sound that would rival that, but if you say so, I mean, give it a shot. I mean, have at it, because I doubt there's any sound better than that.
I just heard a silent I in sound.
I put it in there, yeah. I mean,
I doubt there is as well. However, this is the context you need for this clip, which it can't be as funny as that, but it could come close because it is Indigenous Appreciation Night that's supposed to be on display Tuesday night at the Senators game. And there is an interview during that hockey game that takes place with, I believe, an Indigenous politician who is coming to celebrate her people and the power of an appreciation on display.
She had just recently won the chance to be chancellor. So she's celebrating that as well.
Okay, so here she is giving an interview during a Senators game against the Los Angeles hockey team.
I would need to say congratulations because you were just named chancellor at the beginning of November. And I saw a quote you said, it's so important to be visible. How is your visibility just helping the university and others?
It's very important, visibility of Indigenous peoples, because it's a...
Just 1 second.
Victor Arvidsson again, and it's 4-1.
The only thing that would have made it better is if the Senators had scored and the goal horn went off.
We had to stop her mid-sentence. Unfortunately, we didn't get the rest of that sound so that you could hear the total awkwardness of having to stop for a moment to respect that the Senators were now down 4-1. Down 4. Like, you could have waited it out. You did not have to go immediately to the goal call, but you have to respect the goal call, even in the middle of celebrating Indigenous people.
I would need to say congratulations because you were just named chancellor at the beginning of November. And I saw a quote you said, it's so important to be visible. How is your visibility just helping the university and others?
It's very important, visibility of Indigenous peoples, because it's a...
Just 1 second.
Victor Arvidsson again, and it's 4-1.
And the skating.
Just 1 second.
No, but here, the part that you need to hear here is this broadcaster's lack of confidence in knowing, oh my God, the timing of this is really terrible. However, I have to go grab the emotion of a 4-1 call. So I have to pretend that I'm excited about the timing of this goal.
They're clawing back, Dan. I mean,
I need to say congratulations because you were just named chancellor at the beginning of November. And I saw a quote you said, it's so important to be visible. How is your visibility just helping the university and others?
It's very important, visibility of Indigenous peoples, because it's a...
Just 1 second.
Victor Arvidsson again, and it's 4-1.
It's so important to be visible because shut up and get out of the way. A goal was scored.
Billy, how do you feel about the useless sound montage? I'm not happy that every week we forget to do it on the appointed day when people expect it, they want it. It's a immensely popular segment, and you keep forgetting to put it in the show.
It builds up some TSO, you know what I mean? I found out that Chris, Cody, and Anthony have had this game that they've wanted to do or have
We're
done.
unveiling it today, actually.
Oh, okay. So they'll be unveiling a game today behind the scenes that no one will be able to experience. Oh, Chris is getting a massage, so he's screaming in the other room, which is great.
Hold on. Can you guys take a microphone in there to Chris Cody? I want some live coverage of Chris Cody getting Genesis mashed so that we can hear this before we get to the useless sound. Genesis is coming in here and repairing the bodies of the people who are here. And
By repairing them, she's breaking them down all the way to like the bone, and then the bodies will repair
It's
themselves.
kind of like what they do in the Army. They break you down to then build you back up.
It's a good pain, though, right? We all agree? What Genesis
Not
is
really.
doing. No, it's
But
a
at the
good
end of
pain.
the day, it is.
Yes.
It's so painful.
But good.
Great.
Yes.
Excellent.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
What was that?
That's it. He's got his microphone.
I thought that was Roy. I thought I don't know Roy.
Say what?
I did. I thought
Roy.
I didn't know. I heard a stray sound.
For the love of Susie.
I've never heard that one before.
Who's Susie?
Guillermo, how do you feel about the useless sound montage?
It's there. It's done. We'll get through it. But here's the thing. So Anthony and Chris wanted to play this game or have played this game where they're unveiling this game today where they're trying to guess who the voices are without knowing who
Right,
the
we're not
voices
going to look
are.
at the list. We're going to just listen to the voice
Oh,
and see how
nice.
many people we
Good
can
game.
name.
Yeah.
You know what you should
Excellent.
do? Write it down on a piece of paper, then
That's
I can
what I'm
let you
doing.
know if you want. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing.
It's a
I'm
bad
going to play
game.
too.
Okay.
Jess is in. Roy, you in?
No, I'm good. Thanks.
Okay.
I'm in.
Let's play the useless sound montage.
It's December now. Definitely winning as it happened. Losing can be one too if you let it. I've never tied in my life, so it's a weird feeling.
Well, it's not a loss. It's not a win either. So I think you understand that part of it.
We'll consider everything we possibly can to win a game. So thank you.
I saw our guys go out there and handle it. Whatever that pressure was, I saw them handling. I mean, nobody flinched, nobody batted an eye.
Feels like a loss, but again, like I said earlier, it doesn't count as one. So that's the only positive from this game.
It's cold outside, so I had to get warm. That's what I was thinking about, getting warm. So I did. I think I got warm enough.
He would always say, tough times don't last, tough people do.
I'm going to continue to do everything in my power for us to try to change the result, but you can't deny that there's been improvement.
There's no big narratives, okay? So the big narrative question, they're irrelevant. What matters is the next game and trying to find a way to win it.
If you're going to be somebody to be considered and taken seriously, you gotta stack wins. And so hopefully it's a launching pad for us. We move forward.
Our quarterback played as good as you can play. I think he played as good as any quarterback could play today.
We got to find ways to, score touchdowns. This game's about touchdowns and finding a way to win. At the end of the day, no matter what the score is, whether if it's 45 to 44 or 10-9 or whatever it could be, we got to win them.
Whenever you can keep in a, NFL offense out of the end zone, that's big.
There's two things we can control: is our attitude and our energy.
He made the play on the ball. That's a big boy catch. That's a grown man's catch.
That's the tough thing about sports. You come up short, but I'm proud to be rolling through this with this group.
Well, listen, we've got to lick our wounds, and we got 2 days to figure it out.
Coach Stumlin, let's go for the win, man.